Welcome to the Own It Powercast, the place to be when you get serious about making big changes and accelerating growth in your life and in your relationships. Finally create the life you've always wanted, living life on your own terms. Learn how to take your fear and turn it into powerful choices that will create sustained change. Now your host, Mary Baker.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Own It Powercast, a place where you can come to get what you need to move yourself forward. Hey, it's Mary Baker, and welcome to episode 136, Trusting Trustworthy People, Why Emotional Safety is Everything. As you know, this month we're focusing on connection, why we need it, what healthy looks like and what it doesn't, and even though we need it so badly, why some of us really struggle to do it. Today, I want to once again talk about the concept of emotional safety in relationships and take it a little bit further and even say straight up security against crazy behavior. As a client and I were discussing the other day, healthy is a big web of capacities and behaviors, and they all work together because they need to. So if one has a good sense of boundaries, they probably aren't very passive aggressive, etc., etc. Trustworthy people are those who have shown that they can be trusted. Trusted with our money, our time, our friendship, and our vulnerability. Clients who get themselves out of toxic relationships eventually ask me, well, Mary, now what? I really don't want to pick another unsafe person. How do I not do that again? So that's why today I want to explore what characteristics most trustworthy people have or are at least diligently working on. Of course, I'm probably not going to capture every characteristic, every aspect of a trustworthy person, but my hope is today will at least get you started thinking a little more honestly and openly. So one of the first traits that we want to look for in someone is congruence. And you've heard me talk about that and all the rest of them here before. Their walk matches their talk. They make sense. They're living out their values, and you can see the honesty. You can see the compassion. You can see the commitment to what matters most to them because they show up for that stuff in their life and they prioritize it. So if someone really values family, they're not going to put work before family, or they're really going to try hard not to. Or if they come up against a dilemma where work wants them to travel a lot or work too much, they're going to really struggle with that because even though they value being responsible, they really value quality time with family and putting family first. They've done the therapeutic work to reintegrate disparate parts so they are in alignment with who they want to be. So they don't have these things about them that don't add up, like someone who really values responsibility, maybe is late for work, so they need to get that together. But people who want to be congruent will notice when things are out of alignment, and they're going to want to work on those. With congruence comes consistency. They're pretty reliable people. They're not perfect, but they mean what they say. They show up every week without crazy mood swings, hopefully, without behavior 180s, They don't switch quickly from nice to nasty back to nice to manipulate. They treat you in more or less a consistent manner, congruent with what's going on in the moment and congruent with who they are. They aren't chasing something out there to find themselves either. So you don't see a lot of switching up depending on what's going on around them. They're pretty grounded and consistent. In other words, the self is the self no matter what environment they put themselves in. Trustworthy people are transparent. They're open and they're honest with their feelings, with their thoughts, and with their needs. They don't make you guess. They're not passive aggressive. They don't manipulate. There's no vague, there's no guessing, there's no innuendo. They're pretty clear with who they are, and thus they can be clear with you as best as they can be in a given moment. People who are transparent and consistent and congruent really don't want to be vague. They don't want to beat around the bush. They don't want to tell half-truths because it feels really yucky and uncomfortable for them. So you can feel comfortable. There's less anxiety around transparent people because they tell you the real deal. They don't tell you what you want to hear. They tell you the truth. They tell you their truth. When they're upset, they tell you what's really wrong. Instead of picking a fight about something stupid, finding some distraction instead. They try to hone in on what's really going on for them and then tell you what's going on for them as clearly and as vulnerably as they can. Transparency is really, really important in relationships, especially if trust has been bruised or broken. It's a big deal. When I help people in relationships build back trust, whether it's from an affair or financial distrust or some other kind of immature behavior, it's imperative that they don't hold anything back, even if they think it's silly and their partner doesn't really care or need to know. Building back trust in a relationship, complete transparency is so important. And you have to do it as long as your partner needs you to do it. Transparent people offer up the information. They volunteer it. You don't have to pull it out of them. You don't have to beg them. You don't have to chase them down. Their insides match their outsides. Again, that's what makes them safe people. You're not worried about something happening tomorrow to rip the rug out from underneath of you, and you're not waiting for the other shoe to drop. They don't do drive-bys on you. They don't wait to the 11th hour to tell you the truth. They give you as much heads up as they possibly can, and they understand and respect the boundaries that you need time to choose. You need time to acclimate to a change, let's say. Safe people, trustworthy people, are often very beliefs and values based. They've taken the necessary time to sort out what they truly value and believe in, and they try their very best to not go against these just to be what people need or because they're afraid to rock the boat, to get fired, to be rejected, to lose a friendship. They're brave. They don't stay in jobs or relationships that compromise their ethics if they can help it. It's a very, very painful place for them to be. It takes a lot of courage to do the right thing because there's always loss. And a lot of times, there isn't closure or resolution because a lot of people don't understand maybe why you left. You left that great paying job. Why you don't hang out with your family anymore. Why you dropped that friendship. We have to be brave if we want to be more grounded in ourselves rather than swayed by the wind out there. If you're values-based and belief-based, you're internally motivated by what matters most. That's why trustworthy people are values-based and belief-based, I think. Because they're grounded in who they are. And they've given that a lot of thought. This is not an overnight thing. A lot of bought and paid for working through. A lot of decision making. Because when we pick one thing over another, we have to say no to something. And we have to prioritize our values. We have to think hard about what we really believe in and why. And what are we willing to sacrifice in order to support that belief? But conversely, if they were looking out there for their identity, they couldn't be trustworthy because it would be based on what they were seeing out there in the moment. And that's all fear-based. I know a lot of people have had situations where they've had friends who they thought were good people be swayed by manipulative others or by the enticement of money or power or prestige, and that it actually changes them. It's a very painful thing to watch, to lose someone to something when they've placed their identity out there. Trustworthy people have good self-esteem and they continue to work on it. They've done enough healing work already on their self-concept. Like they've worked through past traumas, they've worked through past boundary issues. They have really worked on their emotional maturity. And they take good responsibility for themselves. Maybe not perfectly. It's not like they're not going to get defensive here and there, or get angry, or have a shitty day. But they're not victims. They know deep down that they don't want to be ego-based and thus fear-based, and that their worth is not conditional. It's not conditional on performance. It's not conditional around how many people like them today. It's not conditional upon being perfect. This is really important in terms of their relationship with you. Because if they're grabbing a lot of self-esteem from their relationship with you, that's a very dangerous situation. Those are the people who can't live without you, quote unquote. And they're the scary ones. So you really want to look for someone with good, decent self-esteem. And they can talk about it and they can share with you and show you on a consistent basis why their self-esteem is in a pretty decent place. Not that they don't get beat up by life. They're going to get hits to their self-esteem. I mean, let's say they got fired for no good reason because of something else going on at work politically. They were hurt in a relationship. You know, they're going to take a hit. They're going to have to do some healing work and come back from that betrayal. But they do come back because this core self is there. Trustworthy people, and you probably already guessed this, have really good boundaries. Well, you know, I could talk all day about this topic and not finish. But basically, they have a clear understanding of where they end and where others begin. Of boundaries and all the nuances about boundaries. They can hear no from someone else and not act out, manipulate and shut down and get nasty. They can respect other people's thoughts, feelings, choices, and behaviors. And they respect their own. They can deal with reality. Boundary work is all about making friends with reality. They have good internal boundaries too, and thus their life isn't chaotic for the most part, at least not the self-imposed kind, where people are always running late and they can't pay their bills on time and they can't show up consistently. They have decent boundaries. They know where they end. They know what belongs to them. They own their choices. They're emotionally mature. They're honest, but they're more importantly emotionally honest. They're not manipulative. They're not focused on you. They're not passive aggressive. They are less reactive and more proactive and responsive. Their focus is on them and the vulnerable truths that they have underneath, and they own them. They can speak them, and they can make their boundary choices around them to take care of themselves. They're the ones who, they might be mad at you, let's say you did something. And they're like, hey, you know, that wasn't cool and I'm really pissed. But I realize I need to set a boundary with you. They immediately bring it back to themselves and understand that they are responsible for how they're going to handle this situation. They can't fix you. They can't change you. They can't make you do anything. They know that. Emotionally immature people will really lash out at you and how could you and you're awful and all this stuff. Trustworthy people demonstrate empathy, humility, compassion, and grace. They can say to you, wow, that must be so exciting for you. Or I'm so sorry, I know this hurts so bad. Or it's horrible what happened to you. I'd be infuriated. Or I can't imagine how scared you must be right now. They can and have done the empathy work for themselves so that they can genuinely offer it to you when appropriate. They have compassion for themselves so they can give it to you with a lot less judgment. They have grace because they've been given grace and they see the fruit of that in their own life. And they have humility. They're not know-it-alls because they know they don't need to be that anymore. They don't need to be right to be happy. They can be open and teachable, always learning, not always having to have the answers. And so they can practice detachment. They're able to detach with love, with caring, from your thoughts, from your feelings, from your needs, from your choices, to respect all of those about you and accept them. Not necessarily that they agree, but they realize that that is about you. That's not theirs. They have to detach and grieve, perhaps, if you're doing something that they're worried about or that they don't like. Because lack of detachment means boundary blurs. You've been listening to the show, you know that already. And that means control in a relationship, which will eventually ruin the relationship. That's why detachment is so important. Detachment allows freedom, and you feel that intuitively in the relationship and in the room. Overall, trustworthy people are responsible. They don't pass the buck. They own their feelings. They can sit there and say, yep, I know I'm really angry right now, and I got to work through that. Or I'm really scared and I got to figure this out. Or I feel really alone. Do you think you have time to talk tonight? They don't put their feelings on other people. They own their thoughts. They own their beliefs. They own their values. They own what they need. And this is important because they can also discern between needs that they got to meet for themselves, like self-care, being proud of themselves, maybe accomplishing some things, taking care of business, making sure they are managing the chaos in their life, but also needs from others. And they don't put the needs that they need to meet for themselves onto you, because that's called immaturity. That's what kids do. That's what teenagers will do. That's what immature adults will do. Mature, trustworthy adults who are responsible will ask you for things that they can't meet for themselves. Like, can you pick up the other end of this couch? Can you drive me to the hospital? Can you come over? Something awful has happened. Those kinds of needs. Belongingness needs too. They'll ask for friendship and connection and maybe partnership. They own their behaviors, and they realize for the most part they always have a choice in how they handle things. They may not like their range of choices, but they realize that they have a choice. They pay their bills, they live in reality, they don't live in wishful thinking. They don't avoid, as much as possible, the hard things. They can deal with conflict. They don't run from it, and they don't people please to avoid it. They realize, even if it takes them a little time, that they need to address the issue and take care of it and own up to it, at least for their part. All of these pieces we're talking about today work together. And I think each component is so necessary for a truly trustworthy, safe person. They also should agree that each of these components matter. And they're at least fervently working on the areas where they struggle. I mean, it's lifelong, guys. We're not going to be perfect in every area. But these are the qualities that you want to look for in someone, and understand that if they really struggle to have great boundaries, they're probably going to be either abusive or passive aggressive or both. They're going to be emotionally immature. To hell with giving you empathy, because they don't even have a separate sense of self. They haven't done their own healing work. Therefore, not emotionally mature. Do you see how everything is intertwined? They can't detach. You can't confront them because they'll lose it, or they'll shut down, or they'll make you pay. They don't take responsibility for their own thoughts and feelings and choices and behaviors. and they feel threatened and unneeded perhaps when you take care of yours. They are often inconsistent, incongruent, shucking and jiving instead of being transparent when they get in trouble. They're not sure what their values are, maybe a few of them, but they might not be brave enough right now in their life to truly live them out. They might let fear of fill in the blank get them to keep that secret or work for someone unethical or tell you a half-truth about why they're late, things like that. You can hear how those kinds of things would hammer someone's self-esteem. I mean, we can't feel good about ourselves if we know we're not being honest, if our insides don't match our outsides, and we can't be proud of who we are. Trustworthy people are proud of who they are for the most part. They're clean. There's not a lot of shit to hide. Especially people who have done a lot of work to get here. It's bought and paid for. They're not going backwards. They know what it was like to be passive aggressive. They remember what it was like to be emotionally immature and reactive, where no one could bring up anything to them without them losing it. They've worked hard to get here. So look at those components in the people in your life, not to judge, not to run up to them right now and say, hey, look at this list. You don't add up. Instead, evaluate for yourself in terms of your expectations. These are capacities, like I said in the beginning of the show. Capacities. Do we have the capacity to do that? Do we know how to do it? Do we know what healthy boundaries are? Have we been working on our self-esteem? Do we even want to? And finally, guess what we have to do now? We have to look at ourselves. Because as you were listening to this list, no doubt you were evaluating the people in your life and whether there are correlations between emotional safety to toxicity and everything in between. But did you also say to yourself, oh crap, am I all those things yet? Do I even know? Am I trustworthy? Am I emotionally mature? How do I know? What do I already feel good about maybe? And where, if I were honest, do I really struggle? If we want to have those wonderful people in our life, and we do, we must also recognize that these healthier folks are not going to want to hang out with a toxic person if they can help it. The math doesn't work. I mean, they would value themselves way too much to do that. They also understand that with limited capacities in these areas we talked about today, it would be so hard to pull off a healthy relationship. So if we want these great people, we have to become or be these great people. The other thing is the belief is that you will draw people to the level where you are in terms of mental health, in terms of healing work, if there's been trauma, emotional maturity. I mean, it makes sense. You're in a different place. Someone who just wants to go out and party and not pay their bills is going to be in a totally different place than someone who, okay, maybe outgrew a little bit of that and wants to save money to buy a house or be there for their kids or do meaningful, purposeful work. That's why values and beliefs matter so much here. So today we describe some of the necessary components to being a trustworthy and emotionally safe human. We broke down each one a little bit, and most of them you're already familiar with if you've been listening to the show for a while. We talked about how these pieces all work together, and we really can't leave any of them out, I don't think. I think they need each other, so to speak. And finally, we looked at ourselves to see where we are on that healthy to unhealthy continuum. And what kind of work do we need to start doing now? Guys, we need safe people and we need to be safe people so we can have relationships that we would want to open up and be vulnerable in so that we can connect and feel true love and true joy and true pain and awe and bonding and belonging and make memories. That's what life is for. But we have to be safe and open and vulnerable in order to do that, and so do they. Thank you so much for being here today. May you stay healthy, stay grounded, and get in touch with you. Focus on the good stuff in you this week and live that out. Be sure to check the show notes at ownitpowercast.com. If you don't get the newsletter yet, sign up. You'll get that each Tuesday with the podcast in it and all the other cool stuff. So, pay it forward, keep focusing on you, and I'll see you next time.
We hope you took away some useful insights and tools you could begin using right away. If you did, please leave a positive review and share on your social media. Because could you imagine if everyone in your life really got it together? Remember, own it now, so you can really own it later.